All right. Good afternoon to all of you. I think you all saw our updates on Lebanon over the weekend. I can tell you that on Saturday, the Secretary General had phone calls with both the Lebanese President Joseph Aoun to congratulate him on his election. He also spoke with the Caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati. In these phone calls, it was agreed that later this week, the Secretary General will travel to Lebanon for a solidarity visit with the country and its people. In Beirut, he will be meeting with Lebanese political leadership and others. The Secretary General is also expected to travel to southern Lebanon to see the UN peacekeeping force and express his support and his thanks for the work they've been doing in very challenging circumstances. We will update you with more details as we get them. Turning to Haiti, yesterday, January 12th, marked 15 years since a devastating earthquake claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. The Secretary General remembers the victims of the earthquake and continues to honor their legacy through the United Nations work in the country. He also paid tribute to the 102 colleagues of our own colleagues who died on that day, including the head of the mission at the time, Mr. Hedi Anabi, and one of our dear colleagues who used to work in the on the documents counter, Alexandra Duguay, who was remembered for her bright smile and efficient work. And we mourn with their families the memory of their passing. An estimated 3 million people, as you know, were impacted by the earthquake, which led to severe humanitarian protection, health and displacement, and infrastructure challenges for Haiti, some of which are still present today. Yesterday in Haiti, the United Nations held a ceremony in Port-au-Prince in honor of the victims of the earthquake and our colleagues. In a statement, the head of the political office in Haiti, Maria Isabel Salvador, expressed her solidarity with all those whose lives continue to be impacted by the tragedy. She also saluted the determination and resilience of the Haitian people who responded with courage to the aftermath of the earthquake. And she also, of course, reaffirmed our own commitment to continue working alongside Haitian authorities and people to build a better future for the country. And just to remind you, there is a memorial of our colleagues in the garden here, which used to be in Port-au-Prince, but it is now in the garden. Feel free to stop by. Turning to Ukraine, our Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, is in Ukraine this week to meet with people impacted by the hostilities, to discuss how we can further cooperate with Ukrainian authorities and engage with our humanitarian partners on the ground. Yesterday in Zaporizhzhia, Mr. Fletcher held talks with the authorities. He visited the site where last month a missile hit a medical clinic, totally destroying the facilities and causing civilian casualties. He also visited an underground school built in just 6 months, which will educate 1,000 children every day. Also yesterday, Mr. Fletcher was in Dnipro, where he visited a collective site for displaced people. Today, he traveled to the front lines of the Donetsk region, where he commended the work of the local first responders and NGOs. Mr. Fletcher saw how communities remaining in the areas are supported by aid organizations and how evacuees receive assistance to a transit center for, in the city of Pavlorad, which is in Dnipro. Mr. Fletcher also visited Kharkiv. Tomorrow he will visit Kharkiv, and on Thursday he and the head of the UN Refugee Agency, Filippo Grandi, will launch this year's humanitarian and refugee response plan for Ukraine and the region. Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Grandi will jointly speak to the press from Kyiv just before the plan is launched. And our special envoy for Yemen, Hans Gromberg, concluded a visit today to Tehran, where he met with the Iranian Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi, along with other senior Iranian officials. Discussions focused on the resumption of a Yemeni-owned political process under the auspices of the United Nations. Mr. Gromberg expressed his serious concern over the broader regional escalation involving Yemen and its adverse impact on the mediation environment. He underlined the importance of the immediate de-escalation for the benefit of the Yemeni people. In all his meetings, the envoy briefed on our efforts for the immediate and unconditional release of the arbitrarily detained staff from the United Nations, NGOs, diplomatic missions, and civil society, which remain detained by Ansar Allah. He requested Iran's support towards the efforts to have them released. And our other special envoy, and that is Mr. Pedersen, the envoy for Syria, attended the Riyadh meetings on Syria over the weekend and welcomed the strong support expressed for the Syrian people and their commitment to assisting caretaker authorities during this critical phase. Mr. Pedersen held constructive meetings with Syria's caretaker foreign minister, Assad al-Shabani, and they focused on advancing an inclusive, Syrian-led political transition and addressing the challenges that Syria faces following the fall of the Assad regime. The discussions in Saudi Arabia underscore the importance of a credible, inclusive transition led by Syrians, backed by genuine international support to help Syria navigate the transition peacefully and to help to start rebuild their country. The special envoy reiterated our readiness to assist Syria and its people in seizing the historic opportunities and challenge. His deputy, Najat Roshdi, remains in Damascus, and she's, of course, continuing her consultations with various interlocutors there. On the northeast of Syria, on the humanitarian front, the World Health Organization and its partners conducted a successful 10-day oral cholera vaccination campaign in Al-Hol camp, targeting people aged from a year to and above. And that took place between 28th December and 7th of January. Our humanitarian colleagues are telling us that the security situation remained volatile in parts of Syria. Hostilities in Aleppo governorate are affecting the areas surrounding the Tishreen Dam, which, as you know, has not been functioning now for 35 days. More than 403,000 people living in the cities of Manbij and Kobani continue lack access to water. Deir ez-Zor, most of the villages in the eastern countryside are facing drinking water shortages due to the insufficient number of functioning water stations. Despite these challenges, we and our partners are continuing to support the humanitarian response, of course, as security and logistics permit. Moving to Gaza, as the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza continues, our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is once again calling on the Israeli authorities to enable the delivery of life-saving assistance to people across the Strip. And that assistance needs to, we're doing our best to deliver it safely, swiftly, and at scale. OCHA reports that Israeli authorities continue to deny UN-led efforts to reach Palestinians with vital aid. Throughout Gaza yesterday, only 7 of the 22 UN-planned humanitarian movements were facilitated by Israeli authorities. 6 were denied outright, 5 were impeded, and 4 were canceled due to security and logistical challenges. Meanwhile, OCHA warns that the ongoing hostilities and evacuation orders continue to displace civilians across the Gaza Strip. We stress once again that civilians must be protected, whether they leave or stay. Those fleeing fighting must be allowed to do so safely, and they must be able to voluntarily return when the situation allows. In central Gaza, yesterday, the Israeli military issued a new evacuation order for residents of Al-Nusrat in the Al-Mufti neighborhood. Our partners estimate that some 4,100 people are affected by the latest directive. The area under evacuation includes residents living in and around 2 displacement sites managed by UNRWA, and also includes 3 medical points and 2 water delivery points and 2 temporary learning spaces. Our partners have observed a limited number of people moving from the area under evacuation towards Nusrat and other parts of Deir al-Balah. Displaced people across the Gaza Strip continue to report to us critical shortages of food, critical shortages of water, and critical shortages of sanitation facilities. That's what the new survey of nearly 2,500 households across the Gaza Strip shows us. More than 2/3 of those households told our humanitarian partners that they had been displaced at least once over the last 60 days. Yesterday, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Mohammed Hadi, visited a church hosting more than 400 Palestinians in Gaza City. He once again stressed the need to protect places of refuge and to end this war. Today in southern Gaza, he visited a factory providing furniture to temporary learning spaces in the Strip. After 15 months of war, less than 1/5 of school-aged children in Gaza have access to some form of learning. And just to flag, at 3 p.m. this afternoon, our Secretary General will speak at the ceremony in which the leadership of the G77 and China passes from Uganda to Iraq. The Secretary General will congratulate Iraq, a founding member of the G77, 60 years ago, for its assumption to the chairmanship for 2025. In his remarks this afternoon, he will welcome the G77's focus on accelerating support for developing countries, especially as we approach the deadline for the 2030 agenda. He will say that 2025 must be a year of keeping promises to developing countries. Quick update from Southeast Africa, where humanitarian colleagues continue to track the impact of tropical storm Dikiledi. In northern Madagascar, we're working with authorities to mobilize response after the cyclone made landfall on Saturday. According to reports, over 5,200 people were directly impacted. Nearly 1,300 homes were flooded, with 5 health centers damaged. Our partners are also distributing water treatment supplies as well as water, sanitation, and hygiene kits. And in Mozambique, the cyclone is bringing heavy rain, strong winds to the northern part of the country. That's the same area hit by Cyclone Cheeto less than a month ago. As of Saturday, the World Food Program had also reached more than 190,000 people in 5 districts with 1 week's worth of food rations. For its part, UNHCR and its partners have distributed more than 800 kits of relief items for 4,000 people. UNHCR has also stepped up its efforts to assess protection concerns in parts of Cabo Delgado where displaced people are sheltering. We are aiming to provide assistance to more than 400,000 people impacted by the cyclone, but to do that, we urgently need more funding. And UNICEF today released a report warning that the world is facing a new and intensifying era of crisis for children, and many of these crises, including climate change, conflict, and economic instability, are closely interconnected. According to the report, showing that the percentage of children impacted by conflict has almost doubled to almost 19% today from around 10% in the 1990s. UNICEF notes that over 473 million children, more than 1 in 6 globally, lived in areas affected by conflict in 2023, a number that is likely to have risen this year. The report is online. We got money today. One more country from the honor roll. Latest country to pay its dues is where the first postage stamps were introduced in the early 19th century. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And we thank our friends in London for having paid their dues, for making it on the honor roll, the first permanent member to do so. For your information, Sir Rowland Hill, a school teacher, is reportedly to have invented the postage stamp in 1837. We now have 7 members on the honor roll. Sylviane, today.
Thank you, Stéphane. The SG will be traveling on Saturday to Lebanon for how many days?
No, the Secretary General will travel later this week. We will share a bit more details when we're able to share them, as the program is still being shaped. But he will be on the ground. Basically, he'll have 2 days in Lebanon.
Another question, any statement
Your microphone a little closer.
Any statement from the Secretary General on the appointment of Prime Minister Nawaf Salam as of Lebanon?
We very much welcome these reports, and I think it's another sign of the positive political trajectory we've seen in Lebanon over the last few days, with finally the election of a president and now of a new government.
We'll have an official statement from the UN?
Well, right now I consider myself an official of the UN, okay. So you'll have to use this as official as it gets for now. Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stéphane. Also in Lebanon, on the appointment of Judge Nawaf Salam as new Prime Minister, will be he meeting with SG during this visit?
All of those things obviously are still being worked out. A lot of it depends on the procedure in Lebanon, but as soon as I have information for you, I will share it.
Follow up on the 60-day deadline stipulated in the cessation of hostilities agreement between Israel and Hezbollah is set to expire on the 26th of January. What's the SG view on this?
Well, this was an extremely important agreement that the parties were able to reach. The situation on the ground is better than it was before. We're still seeing violations of the blue line, which are obviously concerning. I think it's critical that the parties use this time to consolidate the peace, to enable the Lebanese who've had to leave the south to return home, and to enable the Israelis who've had to leave the north of their country to also return home, so civilians on both sides of the blue line can restart their lives.
Do you support a renewal?
Sorry?
A renewal. Do you support a renewal?
Well, we support anything that will move this forward, and obviously we support building on this, whether it's renewing or building on this. Deji, then Pam, then Gabby.
Several follow-ups. First, SG's travel to Lebanon. We know that there's only like hours of traveling time from Beirut to Damascus. Will the SG also visit Damascus this time?
There are no further trips planned, travel at this point.
So only Lebanon?
There are no further trips planned at this point.
Okay. Since you said that he is traveling later this week, for us, Thursday, there would be a press conference?
Thank you for reminding me, Deji. The press conference will have to be rescheduled.
Earlier?
We will, two things we're working on. One is to have the Secretary General will do a press takeout on Wednesday after he speaks to the General Assembly. So we'll do that at the press takeout area of the GA. If we do something earlier, I will let you know. And the full-blown press conference will be rescheduled for when he returns.
Okay. Another thing about it, so another ceasefire deal of Gaza. Obviously, we heard a lot of, let's say, rumors or reports or official languages that the U.S. is very much hoping that this week they could see a ceasefire deal in Gaza. How optimistic is the Secretary General on the deal reached before Trump administration?
It is very clear that the activities have intensified in the last few days. They're intensely going on. The Secretary General received a phone call from the Prime Minister of Qatar earlier today to brief him. Given everything that's at stake, the humanity that's at stake, I will not comment on it further at this point.
Okay, one last question. South Korean media reported that about 300 North Korean soldiers got killed and 2,700 wounded when fighting in Kursk region in Russia. Does the UN has any confirmation?
I have no information.
Any positions on
no
this?
information beyond what we've seen. Pam and then Gabby.
Thanks, Steph. One follow-up is the SG speaking on Wednesday at the GA stakeout after the vote. Is that
Yes,
what you
ma'am.
said?
No, I didn't say after the vote. He will present his priority speach.
Oh, okay.
And he will speak to that after that. I'm not
Perfect.
aware of any vote.
Okay. And on the negotiations that Deji was talking about and you were talking about in Qatar about Israel and Hamas, just to clarify, has the UN played any role? Has the UN had a presence at these talks? And will the UN, unless there's a new Security Council resolution, have any role in the implementation?
Look, we have not been directly involved in the security talks. I'm not going to comment on what will come out and may be agreed to.
Thank you.
Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. Can you give us any more details about the phone call from the Prime Minister of Qatar?
Prime Minister called him to brief him on the latest involving the ceasefire discussions.
Okay. And most of my questions were asked, but I had another one. Has the Secretary General ruled out visiting Syria on this trip?
No, let's one step at a time, one country at a time.
Fair enough. It's a question that a lot of people are going to be asking in the region, given everything that's going on.
I understand, and we've had a number of senior officials go to Damascus. I think others will follow. Everything in due course. But as a reminder, I mean, Mr. Pedersen is the Secretary General's envoy. on Syria. He's been to Damascus. No doubt he will go at some point again. His deputy is there. A visit by a Secretary General involves a certain amount of things and signifies a certain amount of things. So we have to get the timing right.
And last thing is, has the Secretary General spoke to Ahmed al-Sharaa?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Madame Zehil.
Thank you. A little question. Do you know if Mr. Laqua will be joining Mr. Guterres in his trip?
I would not be surprised.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Very few things surprise me. Any more questions online, in person, in the ether, anywhere? Okay. Enjoy the day. We'll keep you updated on things.